Okay, we are back from our break, and Dr. Rob is going to contact lead singer of Nirvana, Kurt Cobain. Kurt Cobain has been the lead singer of Nirvana in the early 90s. They had many albums out. For those of you who are not exactly familiar with Kurt Cobain, he's also the husband of Courtney Love. And Dr. Rob, do you have Kurt Cobain with us right now?
Yes, I do, Bill, and I've been trying to reach out to him since yesterday when we decided to do this show, and I have felt his presence with us for the last few hours especially, so I know that he's anxious to speak to us and to our listeners.
That's really great. The first question for Kurt, I'd like to ask him, how did you die, and was this a murder?
Well, when I touched in with him, I definitely do not feel that this was a suicide. I get the sense that he was taken by surprise by his death. It just gives me a sense of, I'm listening to him now describe it to me, and I believe that, yes, he was actually murdered.
And what reasons would someone have for killing you, Kurt?
From what he tells me, it's about the money. And that's what he keeps saying. It's about the money. It's about the money. It's about the money. I'm asking him to be more specific, and he said that he was worth more dead than he was alive.
I see. And Kurt, did you finish what you wanted to do in this life on this earth?
He says that he died prematurely, but he did feel like he had finished most of his accomplishments. The only thing is that he wanted more of his music to go out for his fans. You know, I get a sense that he was really more compassionate towards the fans and was really doing it for the fans more than for himself. You know, he gives me the sense that, he says, I was famous, but I didn't like being famous. And so I think it was really just for the people, and what I'm hearing from him is that it made him very happy to perform, but at the same time he was always nervous. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's telling me that there was such a prevalent use of drugs in his life, was to kind of balance his creativity. But he says that he had a bipolar disorder that really made him, want to use drugs and to, become an addict that we know he was before he died. One of the things he does say to me that he regrets is not being able to be there for his daughter.
I see, not being there for his daughter. And I'd like to ask him, what does he see in the future for his daughter, Frances Bean Cobain?
He smiles when he talks about her. He's beaming right now as a proud father would, and he gives me a lot of sense that she's going to be more talented than both her mother and him both combined. He says that she has a lot of singing abilities that we're going to see in the future. He tells me that she's very happy child, and that's one of the things that he's, very pleased about from the other side, is that, other people have stepped in her life that have kind of taken his place and really helped, her to grow into the woman that she is today. I will tell you this, when we were talking about the murder, he kept flashing Courtney Love's face to me. And that was something that I was very surprised about, because you asked about murder, and I just kept seeing her face flash in front of my screen that I have in my head. And I'm asking him now, I'm like, is she responsible for your murder? And he shakes his head yes. He's very very adamant about that. I know that when I touch in with him, he doesn't have any feelings of injustice here, but he said that it was all about the money. He said it wasn't just her. There was a management team involved with this as well, and he says that really it was the management team that actually did the murder, but Courtney was definitely a part of it and definitely knew what was coming down.
I see. And what does he see in the future for Courtney Love and her career and everything that has to do with her?
He laughs when you ask that question. He said he's laughing at me. He said he's like, he's got a really good sense of humor as far as she's concerned. When you have a spouse who's responsible for your murder, obviously there's no love lost there. But to be honest with you, he says that she's pretty much over. He says that she keeps herself in the news, but that's really all we'll ever hear back from Courtney. With what I'm seeing here with him, he's shaking his head like, why do you think that she would actually have any talent at all? And I'm laughing because he really didn't think that she had any talent when he was alive, and now that he's on the other side, he sees her with even less talent. And so I don't think it's humorous as much as he does. He's telling me that, she's a miserable soul, and that probably will never change, he says, because she's feeling so guilty about his death and about other things that she's done wrong in the past. He talks to me about her giving drugs to their daughter when she was a baby to keep her quiet. And he says that, that was really not something that he approved of, but he was in so much, denial about everything that he pretty much, didn't pay attention much to what was going on around him. When he was alive, he says that Courtney, fed him full of stories about other people and turned him against a lot of people because it was her way of controlling him. And what I'm really feeling here from that situation is that she says that, justice will come for her in the sense that she's never going to be happy. She's never going to find anyone who's going to make her happy. She's so bitter about life. And he actually says that he comes to her and she doesn't see it as a blessing. She sees it as him haunting her. And she's actually had a lot of breakdowns from using so many drugs over the years that she still has this paranoia that he's going to come get her and hurt her. And he says to me he never hurt her when he was alive, and why would she think that now that he's dead? And he says to me that she always accused him of all kinds of things when he was alive, and that none of them were ever true. And it was her way of making him feel bad about himself so that she could really control him. When I look ahead for her, he says that the only reason why she has anything is because his music is still doing so well. It's all about the money, and she was supposed to save a lot of back for Francis, and he says that she spent a lot of that money that she was supposed to go towards her daughter. She actually spent. So he's not very happy about that, but he says that with Courtney, there are other people that have stepped in the middle of that situation, have now solved that problem, and that his daughter will be taken care of. So that makes him very happy.
And I'd like to ask Kurt, if you could change the past, what would you do differently, or what would you change?
He says the main thing with him is that he would have not gotten together with Courtney. That's the main thing. He said it's a blessing, the fact that, he's with that he had a daughter with her, and it probably would not have happened in any other way. But for him, he said that she was his downfall. She was the one who really caused all of the trouble for him and all of the pain for him. And, they had such a volatile relationship when he was alive. He says that he was getting ready to leave her for good. He said he was ready to walk away from her so many times, but she always found a way to manipulate him into staying. And he says that's one of his regrets, that he didn't actually leave. He said if he would have left, he would not have died. He says that's for sure. He says that, it was his time, because he was accepting that part of it, but he said that Courtney had so many, bad influences on him that had he not hooked up with her, he would still be alive today.
So I guess his advice to a lot of guys out there are to stay away from toxic women, huh?
He says that is true. He said that, he's always been one to, when he was alive, to look after everybody else first, and he looked after himself second. And he says with Courtney, she was just out to use him for what she could get. And, he says that, really he didn't see it until the very end. And like he said to me a moment ago, he said that he was ready to walk away from her. He said that he was within a few days of actually leaving her before his death. And I think that from what I hear from him, that was one of the motivating factors for him to be murdered, was the fact that he was going to leave her. And she realized that, if that happened, then she would be out in the cold and there was nothing she could do about it.
Wow, yeah, so that would change things drastically on her end. And I'd like to ask Kurt, who are you with on the other side? Who is around you?
When I look at the other side for him, he's actually standing alone at the moment. Although he does have a lot of family on the other side that are close to him, he really doesn't have any big stars that we would really think about as far as, somebody that we would recognize. He's pretty much low-key on the other side, except for his daughter Frances, and watching over her. He says that, he's hoping that she'll end up at the university and actually make something of herself. He says that he sees her going into the singing career, but he would like her to be able to manage her money that's going to be coming in from his estate. Even though he's on the other side, he says that millions of dollars still come in to help her over the years, and so there must be some more music out there that we have yet to hear. He's playing me music in my head that I've never heard before. So I would assume that this is really a sign of what's to come as far as new releases. I think he's been dead now for about 18 years, maybe a little less than that. So he says that on the 20th anniversary of his passing, they're going to actually release more music. So that's something for all of us to look forward to in the next few years.
So his music will be popular for future generations. It'll be some, new released, almost per se from the grave.
Exactly. He says that, there's a resurgence in his music, and he sees that as being very profitable for his family. He says that that's something that he's very proud of. He said his music will never die. And I wasn't really a big fan of his, and he kind of laughs at me. He says, well, that's okay. And, but I know that I have a connection to him that's very strong. As he passed to the other side, I asked him, and we had talked about this and before we did this interview this evening, there was a suicide note that was left. And he says that was the handwriting of his manager. That was actually the second part of that note. I know that's been a big mystery to a lot of people, and there's been a lot written on the web about it. And he says that was a management decision to actually finish that letter. And he says that Courtney was aware of it and knew what was going to happen, and she actually paid off these guys in cash to actually come and murder him.
Well, I'm not surprised. I remember a electrician or the electric company meter reader guy found him, and it was like nobody had been around for a long period of time, and I think they were just waiting for someone else to find this, body and report it.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that as well, and I thought it was, very rather strange that no one, came to look for him, and he was supposed to be at a few events, and he didn't show up, and it took him, a couple of days before he was discovered, and he says that, he was hanging out basically with the body the whole time waiting for them to, waiting for someone to find him, and, he says that they actually came back to the house a couple of times and checked on him, now after he had died, there were people that actually came there that could have called but didn't call because they didn't want to get involved. He said that one of the drug dealers actually showed up and actually came in the house because he had a key, and he says that, he could have called, but, he didn't want to get involved either. So he said it was, quite a bit of time there in between his passing, and he said that the person who murdered him actually came back to the house as well to clean up something they had forgotten. And so this is kind of a very sad situation for him just to be hanging out waiting for, someone to come back and discover the body.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. And I'd like to ask if Courtney was ever in love with him at any time.
He laughs again. He said, "No way." He said, "No way." That's really amazing to me. They seem so much in love at one time. He said he loves her more than anyone besides his daughter. He said that, for him, Courtney was his moon and his stars, and a lot of what he did was for her. And he says that he always believed that she cared about him, but in the end he realized that that wasn't true, and that was one of the reasons why he was going to leave. And but he said that, they kind of had an open relationship when they were together, and he said that was kind of a downfall for him too, her being able to see who she wants, and he was basically trying to be faithful to her, but she had lots of friends that were hanging out. And he said that at one point he wasn't even sure whether Frances was really his or not. And now he's on the other side, obviously he knows the truth, but that was always a question in the back of his mind, whether that daughter of his was really his daughter. And that really hurt him a lot to have to even think that, because he really wanted a child. Even though, they had such a volatile relationship, he wanted that way of, carrying on his name. But not only that, but he just wanted a child. He wanted someone to love him unconditionally. And that's one of the things he feels cheated out of in this life, is not having that close relationship with his daughter.
I see. And did he say before that Courtney's career would never, ever rebound, or there's possibly some hope for her career in the future?
He says not as a singer. He says that she's going to release a book in the next couple of years talking about their life. I think it has to do with the 20th anniversary of his death. And that's really the only way that she's going to be able to capitalize. No one wants to really hear from her anymore. And he says that's something that she's, pretty bitter about. She always thought she had great talent. And he says that she thought she was the talented one out of the bunch. And he says that's just not true. He said really, if it weren't for him, nobody would listen to her.
And earlier I heard him describe that she would give drugs to the daughter. So in any way, was she ever a good mother before that?
He says no. He says that, for her, it was really about, being selfish as far as like her looking out for herself only and not really looking out for their daughter. And for him, that was something that was upsetting at first, but he says that family members stood in and took over for Courtney. He says that Courtney and Francis really don't have a really close relationship even today. He says that, for them, she kind of tolerates her mother, but as far as being close with her, he really doesn't really want to have anything to do with her at all.
Okay, and is there anything that Kurt would like to say to Courtney right now?
He basically wants me to convey the message of grow up. That's what he says to me. He says that she's a big kid, and at this point in her life, it's time to realize that she needs to grow up and to be responsible. And he says that really she's only concerned about herself, and that's really not something he foresees, changing for her personally. And so he's kind of disappointed with her all the way around. He's giving me that sense of disgust. That's really how I feel when I touch in with him. Even though it's not an emotion that they generally hold on to on the other side, I think it's more for my benefit of describing the situation, because I don't see him as being bitter towards her or having any ill feelings towards her at all. I think it really is just about, connecting with her again on the other side. He says that, she's not going to live to be an old woman. He says that she really has a short lifespan ahead of her. And I asked him, I said, well, how old do you think she'll be? And he says in her 50s. So I don't know if that's due to a drug overdose or suicide or what this is, but he says that her time on Earth is not a long time.
Okay, and I'd like to ask Kurt if he has a message for his daughter, Frances Bean Cobain.
What I hear from him is how much he loves her and how much he is proud of her. He really wants her to go to college. He says that's the most important thing as far as moving forward with her future, is definitely being in school. And he says that that's something that he hopes that she will somehow, continue on where he left off. He said that he didn't really want to be a singer, but he didn't really have any other choices when he was alive. He says that his choices were limited for some reason. He says that he actually wanted to be a doctor at one point, and he hopes that, even though his daughter has that musical ability, that she goes ahead and gets a regular career as well, so she has something to fall back on. He says that, in the business that was in when he was alive, it was a very tough business, and he says that he hopes his daughter will stay away from the problems. He said that, she has no desire to do drugs or drink, and he says that makes him very happy, and he just wants her to continue on. He says that she'll have a little boy when she's old enough, probably about the age of 25, he says, and he's with that child on the other side, and so he's hoping that, this will be something of a blessing to her, and he says that, 25 is the perfect age for her, and that's kind of what he wanted when she was, when he was alive. He really wanted to have those moments with her, and now that he's on the other side, it's kind of tough, but he definitely sees this as, a time to find success for her personally. He says that she's going to do well in life, and that's really all that he could ever hope for.
Okay, and I'd like to ask Kurt, do you have anything to say to your fans, any messages for us, the fans?
He just says, don't forget him. Keep listening to his music. He says that a lot of his music had a lot of special messages for him personally, and to give out to the fans. And he said that really that's his blessing is that every time they come together to remember him, he's always there with them. And, he says that for him personally, that's, very rewarding to actually be able to come back and sit amongst those who loved him. And he says that there's certain fans that still think about him every day and light candles for him every day, and he appreciates that. He says that that's something that, even though he wasn't overtly religious, he does appreciate some of the extent that fans have gone for, since he's crossed to the other side. A lot of them have tried to help him, with spiritual energy and the different types of works, and he says that he just wants to recognize that and to thank the fans for allowing that to happen.
I see.
Well, I guess, the big thing I feel like with Kurt, now that he's with us here now, I'm kind of asking him, what it is that he wants, to happen next, with Courtney and with his daughter and with everything that's his estate. And he says that, as soon as his daughter can get away from her mother, the better it's going to be for her. And he says that, they'll always have a relationship, but he doesn't see that as being somebody who's going to come and hang out, on a Saturday night with their mom. And he says that really that's not something that he can change on the other side. It's something that's just happening. So really I feel like I sense his energies are kind of dispersing from me, so I'm going to go ahead and let him go back to his peace. Did you have any last questions for him?
So basically you could say he is resting in peace. He's a peaceful soul on the other side.
Yes, I see him very calm and very, not really quiet necessarily, but just, very laid back in his approach. I noticed that when he was alive, he had a lot of hyper energy, but he just talks to me in such a calm manner. It's almost like a radio voice, in my head, and it just feels very peaceful, very calm. And so I know that he is happy on the other side, even though he died before his time. He still has that happiness.
And before he goes, does he have any messages or anything that he wants to say to anybody?
I think the big thing with Courtney is the message to Courtney is grow up. That's what he keeps saying to me, grow up. And I guess that must be something personal that he has dealt with her personally, and maybe that's a personal message that hopefully she'll hear that message and make some changes so that she has a longer lifespan. And I think that's really all the information we have from Kurt, and I'm going to go ahead and thank him for coming to visit with us this evening. And thank you, Kurt, and God bless, and rest in peace.